to stop them, and you can't let them control the narrative. There's a certain point, Mark, where you have to just be like, listen, I can't do this. My well-being and my mental state, it's going to go south if I do this. As you can really like.
I can tell you really cared about this movie, didn't you?
Oh boy, a lot to discuss, fortunately, which is really ironic because you and I have discussed stuff like Escape Room. Did we do Alita together?
We did Alita.
We did Alita together. But this has so many issues with it. Like, it's almost baffling how much we have to talk about. Because you figure with like something like Escape Room, like, oh man, this is going to be hot garbage. There's going to be so much to discuss. And believe it or not, there wasn't really that much to discuss. Like, this is where the meat is at. This is where all the juicy facts are. It's going to be outrageous.
We've sat through Children of the Corn film, the latest one. So
that's true, and I would rather sit through that again because at least it was enjoyable on that level.
On that level, yeah. Oh man. So, do you watch Game of Thrones?
I do. Luckily, my beautiful fiance over here in the kitchen, when we started dating, she actually got me into it, and we binge watched seasons 1 through 7. V, how long did it take us? It took me so long. He's laughing, so I guess he can hear you. So, yeah, so it took us forever. So I only had to wait 2 months before season 8 premiere. She had to wait 2 years, like a normal fan. So. Yeah. A short answer to what you're saying is yes.
Okay, so next episode next week is supposed to be the longest fight like ever. We know we have pretty much the entire cast there in Winterfell. Who's going to get culled? Who do you think's we're going to lose?
I think it's pretty obvious when you look at the writing of episode 2. Obviously. I'm kind of dumb and I have to turn to her for specific names, but I know that I think Grey Worm's going to kick it. I think Brianna Tarth. Well, actually, no, she is Knight.
I don't
Brianna Tarth.
I think they just made her Knight, though. I don't know if they're going to.
They have to. Mark, it's her storyline is complete. Like true. So when you look at the way episode 2 played out with a lot of the kind of like saying goodbyes, you know they're going to be gone. Like Theon, he's done.
Yeah, Theon.
Are you kidding me? I don't think so. He literally has no penis, and he came back to Winterfell going, I want to fight for you. This is his circle. Because he was against Winterfell at first. Now this is his... I'm telling you, the way they were all written leads me to believe that they're going to be done. No. So anyway,
Tormund and Brienne. Well, if Brienne's going to go, then Tormund's going to go.
I think that's the case, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if this was the boldest death of episode 3. I think there is a small possibility that Jaime might kick it too, just because he in the first episode was a POS, right? And so now he is actually like a lovable dude with flaws, even though he has done some horrific things and he F's his sister. So it's like, when he knighted Brienne, I was just like, wait, like we're actually like starting to kind of root for this guy, which leads me to believe that I think the writers will kill him off here pretty shortly. And a lot of people are speculating, no, it's going to be him that kills his sister. And I don't think she's going to really die. I think she might turn into a White Walker, and then I think someone else will kill her, kind of. So it's really complicated, but I think from what we saw in episode 2, if there were definitive like scenes that lingered on to specific people, either saying goodbye or changes happening within the character, I think one of them is probably going to go. Yeah. And also the promo at the end of episode 2 is outrageous. I mean, it literally ends with Grey Worm and Brienne like screaming towards the White Walkers. I'm like, oh, they're done. They did.
Yeah, they're gonna cull most of the cast. I think Arya's gonna make it.
Really? You think she'll make it?
I think Arya is going to survive. Yeah, I honestly do, and I think Jon Snow. We were talking about this afterwards. We were looking at it, going, "Well, Daenerys is going to have a heel turn, just like in wrestling, once
Right.
because now she knows old Jon Snow is actually true heir to the throne."
Yeah,
So
but did you see how easily like that conversation was brushed off, and she was just like, "You're the true heir to the throne." Not that you've been fucking me. I'm your aunt. It's more of like, "Hey, I have this going on." Did you notice that? Like that was not of any concern.
that's Westeros, man. She's got priorities. I don't care.
I guess so,
She
man.
doesn't
But
care if she was, she doesn't care if she was banging her nephew. It's the fact of, oh wait, he is in my way now for the throne.
Right. She was a dick the entire episode, like the whole like Sansa move and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god. She was
Dude,
stop
man.
showing me Bran memes. Listen, here's the thing with Bran. This kid is like Charles Xavier. He's rolling up into joints, literally like touching his forehead, going, "Don't do that, don't do that. I know the future." Yeah, Bran's an interesting character. And I was listening to this podcast and it made me laugh so hard. The biggest question they had for Bran was, who is pushing him to these muddy and snowy locations in a wheelchair? There's no way he teleported. Like, it's so true. Who's pushing him into these really hard to like roll in environments? The great, you think it's the Grand Maester?
Well,
Oh God!
he well, I mean, he lost, hold the door. So
that's true. He lost his Hodor.
That was the guy pushing him around because he was just,
right. But now Bran's just teleporting. He's just teleporting between each scene. Let's see.
Charles Xavier.
So I have to ask you this, Mark, because I brought this up to my fiance, and I also realized that no one else brought it up online. Do you remember the part when they were around the fire?
Oh yeah, it was hilarious. I love that part.
That was one of the best scenes in the entire series. Like, and I'm not even like the biggest fan of the series, but I fully realized there that everything worked, and it was beautiful. But a lot of people are just shoving off the fact that Tyrion said, "What if we win?" Now, what was the scene before that? He had a conversation with Bran, which means Bran probably told him some like Doctor Strange Iron Man shit when they were on Titan going, "I've seen the ending to Endgame" type of deal, and he knows some stuff. And so a lot of people haven't even talked about that. I think Tyrion knows how this is going to end.
It plays out similar to good old Doctor Strange.
It does.
Giving up the stone and people forgetting that. Yeah, because Tyrion seems to know something.
Why would he say that? Even if he said it jokingly or if he said it drunk, which they were, he said, "Ha ha ha ha. What if we win?"
Yeah,
he didn't just say that just because.
Well, no, because if Bronn told him that they do actually win after a bloody sacrifice mess,
right?
Then it's like, so we win. Then what? We got to go after Cersei, who's 20,000 strong, and then after that, what are we going to do with each other? Because we all technically hate each other. It's like we've all done shit to each other. It's like no one in that room was safe from, not doing something mean to the other person. I mean,
I think it would be so symbolic if like a good portion of them survived and like they all headed down there and just like kicked her ass. Like the best death that I have seen someone come up with online is that Cersei needs to turn into a White Walker and Jaime needs to have his fake hand to be dragon glass and punch the shit out of her and just have her shatter. Like that would be the best if he was just like, "Hey sis," and he just clocks her in the face while she's a White Walker and she shatters on the ground. That would be so awesome.
So who do you think's going to end up on the Iron Throne though then?
So there's this thing that was floating around online that me and my fiance and her family filled out before last week's premiere.
Sure.
And it was the Deadpool. And so we all have bets on who's going to either die, turn into a White Walker, do both, and who's going to win. I actually think in some weird effed up way, I think Bran's going to win. And I think he's either going to die a very horrific death and I'm just going to be completely wrong, or he's going to win. I mean, that's the only way he's going to like make it out. But I think there's something about him to where he's going to take over. not like Winterfell, but like be a part of like the leadership group that survives type of deal. And they might give it to him. I have no clue, but like, what are your theories?
Dude, I hadn't thought of that, but now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, Bran wins. He ends up winning the throne, but he doesn't take it, destroys the throne, and said, fuck y'all. You guys go fend for yourself.
Yeah, seriously. And it would be like, it would be a humongous arc too, because the first episode ended with him. It'd be really cool if the last episode ended with him.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a number of, I'm not quite sure who's going to end up on the throne. I mean, they're leaning the way the story leans, but these never go the way you predict. Jon, they're really leaning towards Jon because of his whole arc through this entire story. But I'm like, that one's a little too easy. My one buddy said no one ends up on the throne.
I think that would actually probably be better. But the problem is this plays out just like human history, like, in our time where like no matter how many years or decades go by, this whole world could be wiped out from global warming tomorrow and people are still going to be fighting for power. And it's like, are you deluded? Like, we need to survive at this point, but that's not how some people think on that show. And so it's possible that no one wins, but I think even with all the carnage that's about to happen, someone's going to try to like fight for that damn seat.
What if Jon Snow, because I thought about this, because Jon Snow really doesn't want it. And, Daenerys made that turn of, oh, you could get the throne. And Jon Snow has said all along, is like, I don't even want the fucking throne. Right. I don't want any of this crap. I want to stay in the North, even after he learned who he was. What if he gets the throne, but he has the last surviving dragon and he melts the throne?
I think that's where everyone's getting the theory that like no one's going to sit in the seat, because a lot of people are just saying that dragons or the war are just going to burn everything to the ground. So there's no history left. Mm-hmm. And so when you have, who's Big Boy's name? The Maester? Yeah. Yeah. So, we were discussing this before season 8 premiered that, he holds like the key to writing in the history books when this is all done. And I think everything's going to burn to the ground and he's going to probably write his own history a little bit. Yeah, he's going to skew it. I'm telling you. Well, he's not going to want to put the fucking Lannisters at reign as long as they were. I'm telling you.
Well, it depends on if he survives next week, because he did give up his family sword.
That leads me to believe that what's his name? Joran?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the one that's going to kick it.
Yeah.
Since he got the sword, he's the one that's going to go. I'm telling you.
Joran's, what would be interesting, because it is Valyrian steel, Joran's actually the one that takes out the White Walker, because Bronn in some way say, what I'm saying.
He's bringing up that since he has the Valyrian sword that he might take out.
I mean, everybody else has Valyrian steel too, and everybody thinks Jon might take the White Walker, but I wouldn't be surprised if, Mormont does it. That would be interesting.
But this is what I hate about the show, is that there's like 30 characters and like I can't really pick. It's just like with Endgame, I have no idea who's going to survive, who's going to die. It's just this whole week is just making my head hurt. Dude, and it's going to be an emotional ride, and I'm going to need therapy afterwards.
Dude, I was like that when Scott asked me to do recaps and reviews of episodes of Game of Thrones. That was like some of the hardest shit I ever could do, because I'm like, okay, there's this person, I'm IMDbing and looking at pictures and Googling so I could see who is who, because there's so many characters. It's like trying to keep the names straight.
Yeah, I just finished the series 2 months ago, and I still don't know some of the people's names. I know the main people, and then like if you literally appeared in 2 episodes a season, you can forget about it. I will not remember you.
Right? It's just the final season. They have all these old characters coming back, and they make it up like, oh, hey, they know each other. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? It's like, oh, he was in 2 episodes 3 years ago. It's like, oh, fuck, I don't even know. But yeah, speaking of Endgame, have you seen? Well, you haven't gone to a press screening. Did you get press pass for Endgame, or are you going to be like the rest of us dregs?
So I know you record this portion, you throw it up for your listeners. I'm telling people right now, yes, I have access to certain movies. They do not like me that much. I do not get access to Warner Bros. Movies, Disney movies, and some Universal movies, Paramount, Lionsgate. So I get like A24, Fox, and some Universal. That's about as far as it goes.
Oh, so you're gonna be like the rest of us, Dregs.
Yeah, so we're gonna see it on Thursday night, and then
oh, you got your tickets?
Dude, Mark, I bought that as soon as they dropped. I remember when I woke up that night and I heard the inklings, the rumors that they were dropping that morning, and I looked on Alamo Draft House and they were on sale. I was like, "Ooh, buy it right now!" And then an hour later is when everyone was in those digital wait times, and I was like, "Sucks to be you."
Dude, I hopped online at work just to take a look. And the local theater here, because I live in the middle of Wisconsin, the local theater here hadn't had their website up yet to set up yet to do Endgame. So I'm like, okay, so I'll go to the bigger screen in Wausau. And all the showings on the DLX super mega screen were sold out. But on the slightly smaller screen, there was a 7:30 show. I'm like, shit, I'm buying that with my boys. And so I got my 3 tickets for the 7:30 show on. We got to travel like 20 minutes, but not too bad. But so the 7:30 show, we'll be seeing it. But it was fun just refreshing the page and watching the seats disappear.
Dude, it is like, I know that I like all your friends, Mark, and I'm sure they like me, and we respect each other. But I'm probably one of the few people inside of your group of friends that actually like geeks out over this franchise to a point where I'm probably going to bust down in tears at the end of this thing. So, but you have to, you can't deny that this is one of the biggest cinematic events in our lifetime. Like, if you compare this to, like, Star Wars, or even when the prequels came out, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'm telling you, it's going to be in the upper echelon of just hype films. Like, we rarely see films like this anymore, and it's kind of amazing. And I know it's one of my favorites, and it's really kind of sobering to think about that I've spent a third of my life almost watching this franchise, watching this story, like just spending all this time and money. It's just, I think that's why I got so emotional just watching the trailers. I'm just like, I can't believe that I've invested all this energy into something. And I've never done that before. Like, I mean, because we've all watched like Harry Potter and even Star Wars, but like that doesn't really count because they're like, in decades apart. I'm talking like consistently for, 10, 11 years. It's something we're never going to see ever again.
No, and
but that's just how I feel about it.
And most of my friends feel the same way. And I do not hate on the Marvel universe by any means. I think it's awesome that they did this. My whole argument, and people, I'm not sure where it got lost. No, I've really enjoyed this series and franchise and movies. It wasn't anything problem with the movies at all. It's just the fact of so many people out there think they're golden and other things are crap when there's there's just as many problems with the Marvel films as they are with other superhero films. But
that's a terrible mindset to have, though. Like those are idiots. Like I enjoy anything cinema. I enjoy a lot of franchises. I know you and I are super stoked for the Godzilla installments and of course King Kong and all that stuff. Like I like 99.9% of things in this industry. Like there are certain things that I don't really care for, but I'm not one of these people that's just like, oh, Marvel's untouchable. The only thing I'm getting at, and this is just from like an emotional attachment, like, because I never really got into Star Wars. I'm a casual fan. I love Lord of the Rings. I'm not like a diehard fan. I like Harry Potter a lot. I'm not a diehard fan. I have never been attached to franchises or a storyline like some people love on other things. And I missed out. And so when Iron Man came out when I was 18, I was a little older than when most people started, but there was just something about it, Mark. I can't explain it. I really liked it. And then as they kept coming out, they produced them out like, a factory line, just like one after the other. But there was something about it to where it was very consumable, but it was also intelligent at the same time because Kevin Feige's no idiot. I mean, this is a guy that has planned this thing out for years. And it's just kind of impressive that one, he was allowed to do this, and two, Disney was okay with it because they're very stingy on their stuff. And yeah, they make them money, but like they could have easily stepped in and be like, oh no, I don't want this to happen. Can we do this instead? And Feige would have had to bend the knee and basically do whatever they wanted, but they trusted him and he ran the ship. And so I think that's where I'm coming from. Not so much like, oh, these movies are perfect, don't touch them. I just never had that franchise as a kid that I latched onto, and I eventually found my franchise when I was 18. So that's where I'm at.
Oh no, and I completely understand it. And like I said, I'm not as invested as many are in the MCU, but I still am very interested to see how they tie things up. There are issues that I've had with it, but
right.
I completely understand because for me, I didn't have 20 some films. I had 3. Star Wars I saw in the theater at 2.5 years old. Star Wars was the pop culture phenomenon. That was the thing when I was a kid. That was the thing I was attached to. Jedi was huge for me at that time because we only got trilogies. And then we had the Indiana Jones trilogy. We didn't usually get these longer franchises. So it's a little hard to take in a little bit, but I also understand the excitement many people have, and I'm all for it. That is awesome. This is this generation. I thought about it though. People are talking about the 3-hour runtime.
Oh, I love
and I'm
it.
like, and I sat there and go, every generation has a big 3-hour film. When I was a kid, it was Titanic. Titanic was the 3-hour film that made $1 billion, which was just unheard of back in the 90s. It was like, holy crap. Everybody thought it was going to be the biggest flop ever. 3 hours long. He built, a 1:64 scale of the Titanic, all this money in, made huge bank. People just loved it. Ran the board of Academy Awards. Same thing. Then you jump ahead, basically a generation to Return of the King. Return of the King was for many their 3-hour epic event film. And now we have another generation, a little bit longer distance in time, but still another generation of 3-hour epic event film. And that's awesome that they have it. I have no problems with that whatsoever.
Well, Mark, what's like really funny is like, when I grew up, I never really understood the love for Star Wars. I still think to this day that they're really awesome kids films and even like really great family films. And The Last Jedi is my favorite one out of the bunch just because it's so radical and offbeat. But I think it was when I was watching Civil War, like Captain America Civil War, that it sunk in finally where I was like, I understand people's love for Star Wars now. I understand people's love for Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter and they're diehard fans. I get it now because now I like at that point, I'm 100% on board with it. And, I understand their excitement. So every time when they had a new installment, I would just get super stoked. And I think it's just it's kind of amazing that even when, I was later in life with this franchise, it still got me in that way. But it's like you said, like it's, when kids were, 5-6 years old in 2008, can you imagine them watching Iron Man for the first time and growing up with this franchise? It probably means the world to them. And that actually makes me happy because, like you said, every generation's got it. And, I know a lot of people when they grow up and old and, you and I will be dead by then. They're going to be telling their, grandkids like, the MCU, man, that was some fucking awesome shit. And it's like, whoa, grandpa, watch that mouth of yours.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I completely understand that, I just, what always was getting me throughout the course of these 10 years were the people that thought these films were untouchable. And I kind of chuckled, but it's just like with the Star Wars films. I have some devout Star Wars fan buddies who really don't like Force Awakens and truly don't like Last Jedi for various reasons. Whereas I loved Last Jedi more than Force Awakens because it did radical things. And in all honesty, and I felt bad because everybody's going gonzo for the new trailer for Rise of Skywalker. And I'm watching it going, are they just going to retcon all of 9? And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm sitting here going, so we're going to go back because you set up everything, you cut it off. Great. The last movie gonna be unpredictable. Yes. And then they show the trailer and I'm like, oh. I'm like, we're going that direction. Okay.
Yeah, well, I just really hope that, because I assume that Kevin Feige does not look at social media. I'm sure that he is aware of people hating on his movies, but he doesn't do anything about it because he has a set plan. He does what he wants.
Right.
Kathleen Kennedy, I'm really, really, really worried that she really took the backlash of Last Jedi to heart and retcon stuff, and I'm not saying this to be fact, but if it is, I really worry about that, because you're right. I love the fact that we didn't know what was going to happen in The Last Jedi. Everything was so unpredictable. No one was related to anybody. Everyone was just like, you're a nobody. I love that. But then people are just like, that's not my Star Wars. And it's like, just fucking calm down. You're 50 years old. Just chill. You have your original trilogy.
I'm only 43, so but I didn't have that. No, I didn't have that reaction at all with Last Jedi.
Right, because you and I love experimental stuff. If there's any two people on this platform that love experimental shit as much as you and I, then please let me know. But you know what, Mark? At least if you and I just disagreed on everything, at least because I haven't really heard because. The excitement was there, and then it kind of died down. I know that you and I are still both stoked for this Godzilla King Kong universe.
Dude, man. I'm sitting here. I'm like, May 31st can't get here long enough. I heard there was a 5-minute Godzilla trailer from HBO, and I'm like, I am not clicking that link. I've seen enough. I want to go in just yes. And then because I saw a news article saying there's going to be even new monsters besides the ones we've seen, and I'm like, holy crap. And then my brain started to wander, and I was telling my coworker, who's just so stoked for this as well. He came up to me and he's like, dude, what if one of the secret monsters was a kaiju from Pacific Rim? I mean, I'm like, my head would blow up. I would go out to the theater at the end of the credits, pay another ticket, go back in and watch it all over again. Because
so I have to ask you, because you and I are pretty much deep in this universe. Do you think, because I don't want them to do the whole stereotypical oh, there's a bigger villain out there, him and Kong have to team up. I don't want that. I want them to fight it out. Now, for the sequel for King of Monsters, do you think that maybe, because you mentioned more monsters, is there a possibility that there are so many other foes for Godzilla that do you think he'd be overwhelmed? And do you think the movie will actually end with him losing? And then maybe King Kong versus Godzilla have him, be lost. People don't know where he's at, and then have Kong maybe come wreck shop, and Godzilla come out from the, deep and fight him.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think he's going to get overwhelmed, because if it follows more along the lines of the movies, the actual Toho ones, even though Godzilla's fought Mothra and Rodan by himself, they've kind of also teamed up many times to go against the bigger baddie. So in all honesty, I think there's going to be kind of a free-for-all, but then I think probably Mothra at least, and maybe Rodan will get in on it and fight the other ones, and the big throwdown is going to be Godzilla versus Ghidorah. That one, I'm like, I want to see those two. I'm like, no cutaways, no freaking news footage bullshit. Give me that battle. I don't know if he's going to get overwhelmed. He might. The King Kong versus Godzilla spin, I think they're going to unfortunately take probably the little more high road, where there's going to be a bigger baddie where these two are going to fight first.
I hate that.
I know. I'm not saying for sure.
Right.
Either that, or it's those two end up turning on the humans, which would be awesome.
Good God. That would be the most nihilistic version of Godzilla ever, and it would be really depressing. Just they're just evil, just eating people, and you're like, oh my God.
It's just they're fighting, and the humans say, oh, we can't control either of them. Let's take them both out. And they're just like, wait, what? Dude, they're going to kill us both. Yeah, let's go eat their ass. All right.
Yeah, but it's where the hell do you even go after that? They just kill the whole world, and then they just sit there
Well, they're trying to make an argument. They're trying to make an argument for and as folks can tell, we don't want to talk about Hellboy. They're trying to make an argument.
If there's any other conversation that we can like talk about besides that, that'd be great. But I also want to tear it a new a-hole.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, we'll get to it in a minute. But apparently, Legendary, depending on how King of the Monsters goes, which is if this is a big blockbuster, which everybody's talking Endgame, and that no one's really talking about the Godzilla film yet. But I'm like, I don't know. I think that might be a dark horse in the running as far as the box office goes. Depending
Mark, you got to give it time. Like after Endgame's, I'd say 2-week run, then I think Warner Brothers is going to start amping up the marketing for Godzilla.
Yeah, well, I think it was smart to put it at the end of May. Put it as far away from Endgame as possible. But Legendary wants in more, and if they can make enough bank, I think they could convince Toho to at least carry on the Legendary universe, because they technically lose the rights after Godzilla versus King Kong, and Toho completely takes it back over. And according to Toho, they've got plans for some big shit to happen. And I'm just like, this is a beautiful world. We're getting superhero movies. We're getting kaiju movies. I'm like sitting here going, yay.
Yeah, we live in a very amazing year. Let's just say that.
It's going to be a sad year, but amazing year. And I saw the one meme going around where Endgame's, and the MCU is ending, the Infinity Saga is ending, Star Wars is ending, Game of Thrones is ending. Like,
I know, it's just like my heart can't take it.
It's like a sad year for nerds, and it's also sad when you have Hellboy fans.
Oh, what a great segue, because we live in this time where we have Captain Marvel, Shazam, and Hellboy in theaters, and we're about to have an Endgame. Oh, wait, 4 good comic movies, right? Right?
Well, 3.
I thought there was gonna be 4 good ones. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's 4 comic book movies going to be at the theaters, and 3 are going to be worth the price of admission. And unfortunately, the one we're going to talk about tonight is not. I'm gonna just preface this whole show right now by saying it's not. There's moments, but yeah. So what do you say, Chase? Did you want to try to sum up Hellboy besides just saying it's dog shit?
I mean, how do you even describe it? If you're asking me to describe the plot, I don't even know what the hell it is. It's like the movie starts out with like some old footage, like black and white. Mila Jovovich is like, I just resurrected from the Resident Evil franchise. I'm here to take over this franchise. And you're like, whoa, chick, slow your roll. And then she starts sucking blood out of the thin air, and then she like gets hacked into a million pieces. And then some giant like horse dude like is carrying her head, and like they try to sew her back together. She wants to bring world apocalypse, and then David Harbour's like, I think I got lost on the Stranger Things season 3 set, and it's like, and then he has to go fight her. I don't know. Like I completely forgot about it.
Yeah, we did open with King Arthur, which I'm not.
God, what is this, Transformers 5?
I'm not a Hellboy fan. I'm not very familiar with the source material, just basically the character. But Arthur takes out this evil witch with the help of Merlin, and they chop her up, yes, because she's so evil, because she brought about the darkness. But he used Excalibur to kill her. Well, not kill her, but chop her up, because apparently you can't kill her. So they chop her up and put her pieces, spread them across the world. And then, there's this monster, because she wants to rule the underworld where all the monsters live, and they've gone into hiding in the modern world. They can't come out from the shadows. But one guy who's a really bad CGI warthog man, it goes on a mission to find all Mia Jovovich's pieces, to put her together so she can bring about the dark times, and so the monsters can finally come up from the underground. And to stop them is Hellboy, who is a demon who's raised by Ian McShane. I mean, no, he's playing Ian McShane, basically.
It sounds like you're describing like some failed like HBO or Showtime show or something.
It's not going well, no, but he plays a guy who worked with vigilante, a guy who killed Nazis called the Lobster, sorry, who they go to a secret occult site and the Nazis raised a demon baby, but he actually takes the demon baby and makes him good by shaving off his horns. And he works for this the paranormal society, which goes around basically taking out like they battle vampires and the supernatural stuff, and that's what Hellboy belongs to. But when Mia Jovovich is reassembled, excuse me, the witch, the Blood Queen, Naimu, is reassembled, she realizes that Hellboy has the potential to actually help her bring along the apocalypse and unleash his true demonic potential. And so he is torn between being a bad guy and being a good guy. And there's a lot of CGI fighting in between. Now, I didn't hate this film, but I couldn't. I was hoping this film would grab me, and it never did. It never quite. I'm like, all the elements are here. I should be digging this. You got crossing mythologies, King Arthur, Excalibur, your modern times, and Mia Jovovich, acting like she's in a different film entirely. So did you completely hate this film, Chase, or what were a couple of maybe good things that you got out of this film?
Okay, so I guess for the sake of your Patreon listeners, we're not going to be like some two whiny crybabies on the internet going, this movie sucks, and then say that for 15 straight minutes. We're going to tell you why it's terrible. And we're going to go into explicit detail because there is a lot to cover.
There is.
So, the funny thing is, like, I wasn't like stoked about this movie, but I wanted to see what type of incarnation would come about in R rating, what would come about a more grittier version than what we got with Del Toro's films, because those were great films, but those were, very fantasy driven and very, whimsical but still a little edgy at the same time, like always teetering that line. This is like, hey, we're dealing with an actual character that is a demon from hell. Let's show it a little bit more mature. I have no problem with that. But when the movie starts, we have all of our problems with the movie within the opening monologue. We have shoddy cinematography. The green screen work is awful. Like you said, Mila Jovovich is in a different movie. They cram all this stuff within 2 minutes of screen time without any room to breathe. And it's almost like this movie is rushing to get done with, which is funny because the movie's 2 hours long, and I can't believe it is that long because there's a lot to cover, but I feel like nothing even happened. Like, I feel like the movie was spitting out so much information at us. They're like, yeah, don't you think this is cool? Don't you think this is cool? And the movie ends, and you're like, well, what was the point of all that? Another problem that I found with it, and it's not just the beginning, it's the very end. Mm-hmm. Mark, like when you expect the Blood Queen to go, I want to bring on the apocalypse. I want to bring down the house, so to speak, right? And you're like, oh shit, she's going to really damage some stuff. That apocalypse maybe lasts for like a minute and a half. And then she goes back into the depths of hell. And then the movie ends. I'm like, but the stakes were like her destroying the world. And you treated it as if like she gave the world like a paper cut. And then she went off back into her hell lair. And I'm like, what? No. And on top of all that, it just everything, like I said, script wise and just everything seemed like it was going to be in a rush. And I was like, can we slow it down a little bit? And on top of all that, I thought this would be the bare minimum, Mark. I thought David Harbour would be good. He's actually bad. And I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and say like, oh, he was the best part. But I didn't like his performance at all. I thought all the side characters were awful. I thought all their reveals were just out of nowhere. And the producers were just like, oh, see, look, this is cool, right, kids? And it's like, no, it's not. And then on top, like literally like the cherry on this like poop cake is the fact that like even with like the Del Toro films, even if you straight up hated those movies, you cannot deny the craft and the intricacy of the makeup. Mm-hmm. But with this new one, even the makeup was awful. There's a scene where Hellboy is sawing off his horns or not like his full horn, but like he is sawing, and the sound effect is obviously the saw scraping against the bone because it's not a soft object, right? But no, when he's scraping it with the bone saw, you can clearly see the horn look like styrofoam. And I'm like, they couldn't even get that right. And this movie cost $100 million. What'd you spend your money on? So yeah, I think I pretty much covered it in terms of like detail. But like, Mark, I want to hear from you. This is your show, sir. I want to hear from you. Like, what's like I know you said it wasn't awful, but don't lie to me. Don't lie to your fans. What's like the one thing that just like irked you the most about this entire experience?
It was empty.
Right.
As much information as they throw at you, it is empty. I liked visually the fights, like the fight he had with the giants. I was digging it. But there was, at the end of it, I felt like, what was the real point? Because you're right. They build it up. They do the big reveal with him to where you find out he's in some obscure way the blood of Arthur and he can wield Excalibur. And, we're jumping around, folks. I know, but trust me on this. So they play out this whole thing like he's got this other destiny of bringing about the apocalypse. He even has a dream about it, and it's kind of really cool apocalyptic riding a dragon scene, which I'm like, oh, you're playing to the Game of Thrones fans. But
that was like the only like snippet of the movie that I was like, that could have had potential.
Yeah,
like if you would have just focused on maybe Hellboy living in the depths of hell for most of the movie, or just something to establish like creativity and atmosphere. But it's like you said, it just feels empty to where it literally feels like I'm watching an executive at Lionsgate unzip their pants and they're pissing away $100 million. I'm like, why? You're making a poor business decision. I don't get it.
This film, I think while you were talking about it and I was thinking about it, this film is as if they didn't have a whole script. They had a treatment. They had a film treatment, which, folks, if you're not sure what a treatment is, it's a basic summary of the film, not a lot of detail. It's just basically like, it's the pitch, you give it, this is like the outline, the structure. That's what you have here, but the meat is really missing, which is odd because they do give you a lot of information, but at the same time, you're like, it's like, oh, look, there's a potential, and there it goes. They had a lot more here they could do with Hellboy exploring this fact that he is possibly going to bring about the apocalypse, or he could be a good guy, but they never stay on it long enough.
They literally bring what Mark is describing. They bring it up for one scene.
Yeah.
At the very end, they go, are you a good guy, a bad guy? You know what you are. Are you going to be with me or are you going to be with them? It's like, yeah, that's the question I wanted him to ponder the entire fucking movie. But then we have it literally dealt out in 2 minutes going, see, audience, we said it. And it's like, no, let's just move on. What I described this movie like, Mark, and you have two boys, they were children at one point. I described this film as an 8-year-old maybe getting inside of a toy box and getting a bunch of action figures and playing with them and going, see, this is going to happen here. And then, oh, look, this is going to happen right here. And then look over there, I'm going to fight these two and it's going to happen over there. And then on top of all that, this 8-year-old saw like violence and heard curse words for the first time. And then like, F this, F that, blood, gore. And then that's it. That's my movie. And you're like, okay, little Johnny, that's cute and all, but that was awful. And so that's what this movie kind of reminds me of. And I guess to kind of lead into that point, listen, if you guys have ever heard Mark and I talk, we are not prudes. We watch some of the most disturbing things. We will watch the goriest things. I don't even get like particularly like unnerved by violence in movies anymore, which I guess says a lot about me. So I guess, Mark, I'll sign us up for therapy next week.
Okay.
But right. We can do a joint thing. But I actually found the R rating to be a distraction. Every single time they had to say the F word that made no sense in the actual scene or the line delivery, it felt awkward. And then lingering on shots of people's heads blown off or like specific blood, guts, and gore that yeah, you could show once in a scene and then we can move on with our day, but you have to keep cutting back to like different corpses or different blood stains or different gut particles. And you're like, was this honestly necessary? Did this make this scene any better? No, it did not. You're basically just trying to flaunt the fact that you're R-rated without any impact. So, Mark, did you feel that way at all? Like, because I can't be the only one that noticed that.
Well, the way I felt about this film is it was a wasted R rating.
Oh, extremely.
The R was wasted. I didn't even going into it. In all honesty, I didn't even realize they were doing an R rating until I saw the gore, and I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't even notice the F bombs because they are so just tossed in haphazardly in here. I'm like sitting here going, this feels kind of like, yeah, like it feels rushed. And there were parts, like I said, there were parts that are really good. Like I said in my review, I personally, there's a character in here, folks, that shows up a little later called Alice. She's kind of, she's got this really cool, actually kind of cool power. And I found her really interesting. And I'm like, I want to know her story. I am more interested in her character than I have at all with Hellboy or anybody else here. I'm like, I want to know that story because she seemed like someone that actually had some interesting things for her. And she ends up taking a side, of course, to Hellboy, who, yeah, I just, and Mia Jovovich in here to, again, the R rating is actually wasted. This is one where I actually sat there go, you really didn't need to do the R rating if this is all you're going to do. Because let's face it, there's a line now that's very gray between PG-13 and R. I mean, Captain America tossed a guy, and I've always brought this example up because people talk about, oh, PG-13. I'm like, Captain America threw a guy in the propellers of a plane, and you watched the red mist in Captain America First Avenger. Okay, it happened. All right, and that was PG-13. You get a little more graphic gore in here, but you're right, Chase. It's like the producers went, ooh, we got our R rating, so let's just make this more gory when it didn't need to be at all. It made no sense that part was gory. When you do get to those parts, you're like, I would have almost rather had it PG-13.
Yeah, which is really funny, Mark, because there were 2 movies before this that were PG-13.
Right. And those movies, the way they were designed, are ones like, wow, you know what? I bet you he could go to even some darker places with R. This film, and I understand Hellboy is actually supposed to be a little bit lighter from what I've read now about some of the source material. Again, I'm not familiar. I'm just going by what I know with the other films and the very skim of the surface I know with this character. But still, even then, it felt empty. This felt like we have these rights. We got to get this film out. Well, let's just do this. I mean, through most of the film, Hellboy is, I know Ron Perlman is a hard act to follow, but really, I really wanted his Hellboy in here because, as you mentioned, as good an actor he is, he just, David Harbour just didn't quite have it. It felt like he was just reading the lines. It felt like he was just saying them.
Right, hey, it's all about charisma. Ron Perlman has a charisma to this, like, beaten down, like almost like drunked out, like demon guy. But like for some weird reason, we like following him. We want to see him become good, and he does kind of struggle with that good and evil thing. David Harbour's just like pitching out these terrible one-liners, going, "Yeah, I'm a demon, kind of crazy, right?" And you're like, no, it's not crazy. Like, stop making this.
Well, and then they're playing this angle throughout. He calls Ian McShane, just like in the other one, because Ian McShane's character, he plays the professor, who, just like in the Del Toro one, he's the one that brought the paranormal, crew together. And so he's in this, and Hellboy calls him dad, and they're playing at this kind of father-son relationship. But one, I never felt it at all. It felt forced. And two, I'm looking at this type of relationship, the way they play this out with such kid gloves. I'm like, that's where I was sitting there going, you should have just made this PG-13. Like, with the way they handled that theme. I mean, and Ian McShane, God bless him. I like Ian McShane. I really like Ian McShane. And he just felt like he just was there. He was like he was playing himself. He didn't feel like another character at all. But the Hellboy character for sure, David Harbour, I tried. He had the look, but it was like they were relying more on his look than his personality. And I think that's because Ron Perlman, now that you're talking about it, is like the Johnny Cash of acting.
Well, and I seriously think they only casted David Harbour because of his voice. He does kind of have a Ron Perlman-esque, like he has a gruff grit to his voice that sounds like, I'm not gonna lie, like very appealing, very sexy. Like it's a good voice, but it's just like it doesn't work for this.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only reason the first two Hellboys worked is because of Perlman, not the actual character. So when you have a Ron Perlman light, get in the makeup and do the isms and the line delivery, it's going to be a lesser than, and we're not supposed to compare. So if we're going to look at it straight as this is the only Hellboy that ever existed, it's still bad because, like Mark said, you don't feel anything from everybody. Everyone's going through the motions, and that's irritating because at least with like a terrible script or even a terrible director, an actor can still make it the best that they can. And I will always give them, credit where credit is due, but it just feels like no one had passion in this movie. And that even goes down to the director. Mm-hmm. I actually like the director. I actually think he's made two great movies with the Descent and Doomsday. Mm-hmm. If you guys have ever seen Doomsday, it's a very schlocky, like kind of B gore movie, and like it's fun. And the Descents are really great exercise in claustrophobia filmmaking.
Well, and he did Dog Soldiers as well. Dog Soldiers, Descent, and Doomsday are some really dark films. They're fun and they're a bit schlocky like Doomsday, but Doomsday still hits some dark places. It goes to some dark moments. I really digged Doomsday.
It has a voice. It has a voice. This has nothing. It's void of anything.
Doomsday had an identity, had a voice. Hellboy, like you said, it really felt, as much as I like some of the visuals, it really felt like they were just going through the motions. Like this is something that they're being forced to do. And so they're just like, okay, and maybe it's because maybe David Harbour wasn't quite used to acting in makeup like Perlman was.
It's really funny you mention that because there were a couple scenes, now that you bring that up, it was a close-up on Harbour, right? And like he was trying like to get some pathos out of the scene. You're like, okay, this is it. This is where he's going to draw from his character. But what was odd about it was he was attempting an emotional performance, but the foam around, like his foam rubber lips weren't moving. They were like slightly kind of going up and down, almost as if he was being operated with someone's hand up his ass and he was a Muppet. And I'm like, what? No. Like, so like I said, Mark, even the bare minimum, they couldn't even get the makeup right.
Yeah, the makeup in spots was rough, to be sure. And it's sad because actually the film, I will admit, in the very beginning, after you get past the bad CGI, and maybe they were trying to go for, because it was a story, they didn't feel the need to spruce up the effects a bit, where they chop up the Blood Queen by Arthur and the Excalibur, and you get that whole thing in the beginning. You get a scene where Hellboy gets in a wrestling ring, and you get some wrestling going on. And I'm sitting there going, okay, this is kind of the outrageous stuff I want to see. But even that, the minute it was done, I was like, well, that happened.
Yeah, because what Mark is describing is literally like after the first stupid prologue to the movie, and it's literally him walking to a wrestling match,
Yeah.
And the guy he's fighting, I don't even care if I spoil this for you guys. Just enjoy
well,
this.
it's a spoiler room, so you
I don't care. I still want them to know that I don't even want you to waste like your interest in this movie. Just listen to what we're saying and then just move on with your life. So Hellboy gets into a wrestling ring and he's like, I'm going to fight you or whatever. And this guy's just like, I'm going to fight you. And, he's getting all strong and he turns into a demon and you're like, oh, wow, this is getting interesting. Oh, wait, he just impaled him on one of the corners of the thing.
Yeah.
And then he says something in gibberish. And then he's just like, okay, I'll take that information with me. And then we just move on as if what happened? What was that?
Yeah, and that was the thing is when we got to the wrestling part, I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. All right, we're outrageous situations like this. This is what I want to see from this. And after that, you're like, we don't quite get that until like the giant battle, which was like a half hour later. You find out there's another organization, which again, for me, I enjoyed bits of this, like the part where Hellboy joins up with the British equivalent of the paranormal investigation, the U.S. Faction. He pairs up with, I forgot what they call them, the British side, and they go out because they're going to go take out giants, and they end up turning on him. And I'm sitting there going, okay, this is cool. This is awesome. And it was fleeting because we got a moment like that, like, okay, this is some meat that people are out to get him now. What is he going to go on the run or what? And they didn't. They hit these ideas in this film that I was really enjoying, but then they never did anything more with them. They felt like they had to move on. And the whole exposition in the beginning with Arthur cutting up the Blood Queen and that, you actually didn't need any of that. You could have cut that section out and still followed what was going on. And in fact, I think it would have made it a better film than starting out with that retro scene with Arthur, because I like it. But that is kind of the fault of a number of, especially genre fantasy and fantasy horror, fantasy action type films nowadays, is we get this prologue intro with all this history of backstory. You're like, okay, great. And not a half hour later, you have someone reciting almost the exact same dialogue or showing some of the exact same scenes later on to catch the characters up. And you're like, why did you take me through that 5-minute section in the beginning if you're just going to lay it out for me here? I've not understand that method. And more modern fantasy films, especially sci-fi, and it seem to do that. You get this history, this backstory, and you get it all presented to you in the beginning, only to revisit it like 2 or 3 times throughout the film. And you're like, why? Why did you do that? I almost would have rather gone in cold to figure out, okay, who is this Blood Queen and getting put together? And okay, it's and me,
like, can you imagine, like, it might have been somewhat funny to people, and I totally get that. And this is why I will never become a successful screenwriter, Mark. But wouldn't it have been interesting, or way more of a hook, if you will, if one of her minions was out in the middle of a field and it was just this scary looking demon on Earth, and we're like, okay, what is he doing? And what if the demon was like shoveling a hole in the ground? We're like, okay, he's obviously digging up something. He picks up the box and he starts walking the opposite direction. Then the next scene cuts to him walking towards this cabin, and he goes inside and he puts like the last piece together of the Blood Queen. And then it forms into this human demon thing known as Emilia Jovovich. And she goes, find me the demon or something. And then we learn about her past later on, but like that would be a good hook. And then you cut to the title card and then we move on. I would have been way more interested in that and be like, wow, why was her body dismembered? Like all that stuff. Like there's so many other ways you could have started this.
And then you get to the hook of the demon of Hellboy being part of the Arthur bloodline, which I saw coming a mile away.
Right.
When they threw Excalibur in, The minute they said Excalibur was the only thing that would kill her and it needs to be wielded by someone from the bloodline, I'm like, Hellboy, it's going to be Hellboy. And sure enough, an hour later, yep, he's wielding Excalibur, which kind of gives him all this power. And yeah, this has a third act, folks, that got me hyped again. They got me again. He grabs Excalibur. They find it underneath this church, the real Excalibur, after Merlin unsuccessfully tries to get him to grab Excalibur the first time. And he tells him, oh, hey, by the way, you're a child of Arthur. And he's like, huh? What the fuck? And the audience was like, huh? What the fuck? He goes to get the Excalibur and he comes out all badass, like demon. And the minute he does that, Blood Queen is in full effect. We get this awesome montage of some of the creepiest, badass creatures wreaking havoc in London. And I'm like, oh, shit is going to go down. He's going to turn good. He's going to go out and fight these things. And he doesn't. He buries the sword back into the ground and breaks his horns off. And that defeats all these super big, creepy creatures around the world. And I'm like, well, that was, anticlimactic.
Yeah, I'm not even joking. The whole third act is like maybe 3 minutes long, and it's just literally close-ups of demons ripping people's heads open. And then it goes back to the church, and she's like, "Oh no, I've been defeated." And then she goes back in her hole, and you're like, "What was the point of that? I don't understand. You built your whole movie up to this point. Why did you blow it? I don't understand it."
I was waiting for him to get on some dragon that pops up and go and actually turn good and just fight all those big baddies. Just quickly. He could be dispatching them quickly because he's Hellboy. Just dispatch them all, come back to the Blood Queen who, might be still injured or whatever, and then just dispatch her, like drive the sword through her back into the stone. Something along that lines. But that's the thing. This film had all these little fun moments for me in here. But at the end of the film, I was like, what was the point? Because there was really no arc for Hellboy. There was really no arc for the paranormal investigation group, really, even though it was revealed later on, Hellboy got pissed at Dad for lying to him. And then we totally skipped out, Chase. We've got to talk about the Mr. Howell's Walking Castle scene.
Oh my god! What on earth?
In another dimension.
Oh my god! I forgot about that.
We get this scene with Baba Yaga, which you think, okay, we're really getting into the weird stuff. Again, it was one of those moments, and that's why I gave it like 2 3/4. I'm like, yeah, you could rent this. I'm like, you get into this Baba Yaga thing, which is a cool thing. You got this thing walking on legs, his house. He's in another realm. He's talking to this Baba Yaga who he beat the shit out of, who, he's having this conversation with. And I'm like, yes. And then it was fleeting. It was like, oh, we're done, gone. And then they come back for this mid-credit sequence that was totally just Baba Yaga later on during the mid-credit sequence is talking to someone off screen who you think might be Rasputin. At least that's the kind of the prediction. They introduce another character. Again, you kind of fall into and Chase, please take no offense to this whatsoever, but you fall in a little bit of the MCU formula of the mid-credit sequence to where if you're not quite familiar with the characters, you may be lost on what the significance is of the person in the mid-credit sequence.
Hey, listen, I agree with you. I remember after the first Avengers and the end credits rolled, I jokingly said, hey, is that Grimace's cousin? But deep down, I was like, oh shit, I have no idea who that is. But I had to do research on it. And so there are certain people that I don't know. And I have to kind of look them up. And that's not, I don't find that as an issue. I mean, it gives me a chance to like go research something I never would have learned about. So When I saw that, I think it would have been different, Mark, if the movie was good and then the end credit scene rolled and being like, "Ooh, that's kind of cool. Let's see where that goes." But since the movie was atrocious, I did not care, and so I was like, "Cool, now let me get up and go to the bathroom."
Right.
So that was where my mind was at.
I wasn't invested in the film enough or the characters enough at the end to really care what the big secret voice was off screen that Baba Yaga was working with. Because I was still trying to figure out exactly. I'm like, they're trying. I mean, you could see bits and inklings in here, but it just nothing ever is completely developed. It's like there's bits here, bits here, bits here. And yeah, again, you have a villain who is chewing up scenery left and right. I mean, it's like she's just putting her all into this villain character, and everybody else is like, is she in the same movie as us? I don't know. But at the end, I didn't really care enough. Whereas at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, I think it was 2. I didn't
with the 5 post-credit scene.
with had the 5 post-credit sequence, but I think it was the end of 2 where you had the that was the end of 2, yeah, where they had the blonde, the golden guy,
Adam Warlock.
Right. I had no clue the significance of that person. Right. So at first, I kind of felt a little gypped because I heard gasps by about half the audience, and I'm like, okay. But as you did, I went and researched because I was so invested in the galaxy, you know, and especially the other characters that showed up at the end of Volume 2. I'm like, who are all these cool looking people? I need to find out more. But I was so invested in the characters and the story by the end of it. I mean, come on, I'm Mary Poppins. Y'all actually brought a tear to my eye. The scene with Rooker at the end there, you know, I was so invested that I cared. At the end of Hellboy, I was still trying to process exactly what I was supposed to be getting at the end of the film. So then you get these credit sequences like, oh, look, they're setting up for a sequel. I'm that same way, though, with a horror film. You know, a lot of horror films, the hook for a sequel feels so forced that I'm just like, yeah, okay. You know, I'm like, you didn't really need to put that in there. You could have just left it. And if you want a sequel, start fresh. I don't need that. And here, the same thing. We get 2 end credit sequences with Hellboy, who not people are even less familiar with. And you're supposed to kind of figure out the significance. And maybe you want to go look it up. But first, you got to figure out if you care about Hellboy character, which at the end, you don't. You really, I didn't care about what happened to Hellboy. It was like, oh, you know, I was more interested in Alice. I was more interested in the tiger guy played by Daniel Day Kim, who was completely wasted in this film. You know, I cared about the side characters more than Hellboy ever, because I was just like, you know, yeah, I understand in the comics, I've heard that, you know, he's not supposed to be that charismatic. He's supposed to be an a-hole, but in this, it really felt like everybody was going through the motions. But at the end of the day, you just get this film that's kind of just there. It's like, it just made me want to watch the other 2 Hellboys.
Yeah, it's I think what's the worst part about everything is that I saw it. Oh boy, about 10 days ago, and I don't remember much. Like it, as soon as you're done with it, you immediately forget about it, and I think that is probably the worst when it comes to any movie. Is even if it's like terrible, you can be like, ha, ha, I remember that stupid scene. With this one, I honestly can't tell you what like specific names are of characters besides Hellboy. I can't really tell you the exact plot for plot. Like Mark did a better job than I did. So it's really bad when a movie does not have any staying power.
And that's really because, in all honesty, for me, I was giving it more thought, and it was like, lots of this film, it's not exactly horrible, but it's not good either. If ever you heard the definition of a mediocre superhero film, That's this one. It's got some elements you like, and maybe the fans get more out of it, but the rest of us, it just felt so mediocre. It felt like it's half the effort. It's not Deadpool maximum effort by any means. It felt like they just like wanted to toss this out there because they had the rights. They committed to doing a reboot without Guillermo, which a lot of people said they should have just let him finish his trilogy. I bet Ron Perlman would have been up to it in a second.
Yeah, I wanted to see a trilogy, but the problem was he was asking for, I think, 200 million for the third one. They were not going to take that risk, and so he was not going to change. And so I was like, okay, fine. But also, if your movie cost $100 million and you were able to crap this thing out, someone should get fired.
Right.
Because if Deadpool, which has arguably even shoddier green screen than Hellboy, if they were able to make that for 58 million and make almost 800 million worldwide, they did something correct. You should probably figure out what that was, because if their movie costs almost half of what your movie costs, and it was also R-rated, it pushed boundaries, it was definitely more low budget than most films from Fox, and they did it correctly. Maybe you should take a look at why it was. Maybe it was Ryan Reynolds and how he is charismatic and he can carry a movie on his shoulders even if the movie's garbage. You did not have that. You had David Harbour, which felt like he was reading lines, and that's not going to cut it. So, yeah, I don't think Lionsgate is going to recover from this for quite a while.
Well, where did you get the 100 million from?
Is that budget? Box Office Mojo?
Okay, because then maybe they tweaked the numbers on IMDb to make it less of a loss. Because according to IMDb, now they have, of course, in parentheses, estimated 50 million for Hellboy.
I don't know who's running that website. Maybe it's a Hellboy fan.
I'm suspecting that some studio PR folks were yeah.
See, okay, so that's what's weird. On Box Office Mojo, they changed it to 50. I could have sworn to you that I read it as 100 2 weeks ago. Now, it's very possible that the production budget was 50, but there's no way in hell they didn't reach up 100 million with marketing and stuff.
No, it's marketing. Whenever they do budget, it's marketing. And I had heard that it was going to be closer to 100 million, and it may have, and they may have tossed it down to 50 million, which goes just to the opposite spectrum. Then, though, it's like 50 million for a Hellboy film for what you have in there. I'm like, why are you bothering? You know what I mean? You find that middle road. Deadpool, yeah, could get away with it, and I think Deadpool 2 still was under 100 million. But I don't know. The elements were all there. It just never gels. It never comes to something to where I got really invested in it. And I think you're right. I think it really boils down to Harbour not necessarily playing a character like this before, because I don't think he has. And when you get someone like that, you have to have a really solid elements surrounding him, because this is a first for him. He's not as comfortable, whereas you get Ron Perlman, who's acted in makeup many times before. Cripes, he was in a TV series where he had to wear makeup all the time, Beauty and the Beast, Linda Hamilton. Where he could do that because he's used to it. He's comfortable with it. I personally think Harbour wasn't quite comfortable with it, even though he had the makeup. There's something lacking in this film.
I can tell you what, Mark, his agent is one of the smartest people alive, because they signed him on to the Black Widow movie before this movie came out. And that was such a smart move, because I'll guarantee you he would have not had any deals after the abysmal critical rating, and then, of course, the opening for Hellboy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's only made 12 mil opening weekend so far.
It's only at 19 total right now. 19.
19 million. total. And again, the budget supposedly is 50 million. Marketing, they usually don't put in the box office budget. I mean, in the budget numbers on purpose, because if they did, you would have MCU films up to $500 million in budget. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think there's elements here. It was one of those films where, and you've probably reached them too. I don't know if you felt with this, but where you're watching it going, I really should be liking this film for the elements in here, but I'm not.
Right.
I'm not really enjoying. I mean, it is enjoyable at the moment. It has lots of moments, but yeah, when the credits roll, you're not, I don't think, going to come out of this film going, wow, damn, I want to go buy another ticket. You'll be like, huh, okay. That's why I say wait for rental with this, or if you're a fan, at least wait for a matinee. And maybe fans get, of the Hellboy series, get more out of it. But for me, I'm a big visual guy and I love the visuals, but I do need at least a little bit more story to it. And this one, for the type of movie it is, now people will say, oh, you're hypocritical. What about Sucker Punch? I'm like, different movie, different concept than Hellboy. Okay, Sucker Punch was all about the visuals. That was the whole point. 3 genre bending, phenomenal scenes that you're just like, holy crap, steampunk Nazis. Here with Hellboy, you want a little bit different structure and context, and you don't get that. You get all these things that they thought looked visually cool, and they're like, maybe if we make it look cool enough, they'll not realize just how somewhat predictable and generic our plot is. Yeah, I don't know. It's I wasn't too caught up by the trailers when they came out. I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And hoping they would provide more, but what you see in the trailer is exactly what you get. And I like Mia quite a bit, and she's defending the film, and I'm like, more power to you for defending the film you're in. I'm like, I like her as an actress. But I don't know. This film was just middle of the road for me, and it really, unfortunately, where it could have had potential, it falls flat in every aspect.
Yeah, I think after watching this incarnation and knowing that they're not going to give Del Toro the funding for a third one, I think you should put this character and storyline to rest for a while.
Or maybe do animated.
Animated could work. I mean, do kind of like what HBO did with Spawn back in the day, make an animated series.
Dude, the Spawn animated series was wicked.
Yeah, I watched. I haven't finished it. I've watched a few episodes, but it's pretty amazing how you can make animation so much more of a visual impact, even though you're telling the same story. And I think when you look at the Spawn movie, I know it's got its fan base, but it is still pretty bad on a technical level.
Oof.
But when you look at the animated series, it was able to have so much creative leeway with everything that it felt like this was the appropriate medium for it. And I think Hellboy could go down that route, and it's had animated kind of incarnations in the past. But if they were to kind of explore this character, explore the underworld, explore, on Earth and all that stuff, I think you're right. I think if, Lionsgate owns it, and I think, trying to think which one they have stake in. It might be Amazon. It might be Hulu. I'm not really sure, but they should probably hit up one of them for if anyone has a pitch for an animated series.
I mean, cripes, Netflix, look what they did with Castlevania, for crying out loud.
Right. I like that series. It's a really just hyper violent but super emotionally driven anime series. And it reminds me of like a really good anime show, and it fits that medium perfectly.
I mean, if you want to do another Hellboy film, heck, take a Into the Spider-Verse route with it. Dude, that would go Grindhouse.
Yeah, you could.
Could you see it in that style, but more Grindhouse type? I mean, really take it somewhere, because you do have some freedom with the type of character it is. The live action, Del Toro made it work because, yeah, I'm a fan of Del Toro's because the man knows how to his production design is just visually stunning. It's like, yeah, freaking Pan's Labyrinth. Fucking A. That movie, man. Not only is it heart-wrenching, but it's just visually mind-blowing, some of the stuff he does. And even the original two Hellboy films, regardless of how you feel about it, the world he builds is just fantastic. You know what I mean? So you've done that. Take Hellboy in another direction. Go animated. If you want to do another feature, maybe go into the Spider-Verse, but take it grindhouse style. Uh, there's other ways you could handle it, or animated like Spawn and do a series. Because yeah, this film, they cover so much in this story. I'm like, this would actually make an interesting series because you could explore all these elements that they just touch on. I mean, you could explore the Excalibur more. You could explore him being tormented a little more about whether or not he's good or bad. We could see more Mia Jovovich. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that out loud?
I mean, this is your show, sir.
I think every movie should have some Mia in it. No. But animated, I think, would be the really interesting way to go, especially if you take it like a Castlevania type angle or into the Spider-Verse. Do something different with it because you have the freedom to do so because it's such an obscure, odd series. Don't play it straight, which is what I think they were trying to do in this. It felt almost like they were trying to play it kind of mainstream comic book film. And with these characters, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I just what's really funny is like I was rooting for it for the entire time, like because I mean, especially for me being a fan of this genre, I was gonna have 4 in this genre in theaters at the same time. I was like, wow, Captain Marvel, great little movie. Love Shazam, cool, we're on a roll. Then we get to this one, it's almost like we were reminded that even with the flaws and the missteps taken in comic book movies, we don't realize how bad it can get sometimes. And
you forget. Yes.
Yeah, you forget how bad it can really get. And even me, like I'm not, because Mark and I discussed this earlier, I'm not one person to just be like, oh, everything Marvel is perfect, everything DC is perfect. No. If you have flaws, I will point you out in a heartbeat and I will blast you on air. Hellboy is one of those prime examples to where even if it had minor flaws and everything else was great, I can excuse it, but I'll address them. But this is just, it's kind of inexcusable on how many offenses are stricken against it, so to speak. So yeah, it's makes me really sad.
And with as many films that now more and more is a trend, folks. I know you don't think it, but pay attention because more and more feature films with big name stars are going direct to streaming. Not only that, they're going direct to streaming to the production company's streaming. And if you don't believe me, just keep an eye on Disney Plus within the next couple years. But this film, I think, actually would have probably done better had they cut their losses and gone direct to VOD. I think if they would have gone direct to VOD, I think it would be accepted a little bit better because just the way people's perception of it is, and it almost has that feel like not quite wide release, but good enough for VOD, especially if it is actually the budget of 50 million. Come on. You toss it on Amazon for $5 or whatever. Someone may actually go, oh yeah, sure, I'll buy it, or rent it. But going to the wide screen like this, especially when, yeah, like you said, you're going up against 2 other Captain Marvel films, which are both highly entertaining films. They're different films, but they are both awesome and want you to actually go see it again. This film comes out like, hey, look at us. Look what we could do. And you're like, Yeah, I'm just gonna go watch those other two films and wait for, pay my $5,000 for my Endgame tickets.
Right. And listen, I want every comic book movie to be like the best thing ever, but I don't think there's anything more disappointing knowing that I was one of the few people that was looking forward to R-rated incarnation to see what they would do with it. I like David Harbour. I was like, cool, I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt. And I sat there, I gave it a chance, I examined it, and I could not walk away from that movie even giving a slightest recommendation to it. I hope it gets lost in the ether. I hope it loses someone a lot of money because someone made a stupid mistake. And I think they need to learn from that, Mark. I think it's a lesson to be learned.
I think so too. Well, I'm not as uh dead set on completely ignoring it. I will say just wait for rental or when it shows on Netflix. Doesn't need to be seen on the big screen. Because any cool visuals you get aren't on the screen long enough for you to really enjoy them. And I would say if you want to watch it, just at least wait for rental. At least a couple of bucks. Oh wait, seriously? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, folks. I'm just scrolling down the IMDb page real quick, and I see a connections section on IMDb, and featured in Chris Stuckman's movie reviews, Hellboy. That's a whole nother discussion altogether. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Mark just had a mid stroke on air.
I think my brain just locked on that. Anyway, yeah, wait for rental. Chase says avoid it. Take that as you will, folks. I wish they would have removed the R rating from Hellboy, took the PG-13 rating from Venom, given the PG-13 rating to Hellboy, and given Venom the R rating. Because at least we could see some blood when heads are getting bit off. Um, you know,
But see, Mark, this is a lesson because not everything needs to be radar to be cool.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, and I don't think that at all. But there are some stories when you watch them, and you've seen them. You watch a film and you're like, wow, they really wish they were R. They really want to go someplace that they can't because of the rating, or it's so cut up. You're like, yeah, I bet you there's an R cut somewhere. But this is not the case with the Hellboy. I'm looking at it going, why did you give it the R? You wasted the R on stuff that had mature content you could have put in here. You didn't, and the stuff you did put in here wasn't needed, and that's where it is. So I think the studio is lesson learned. I'm not sure. I don't, even though they set it up for a sequel or two, I don't know if we'll actually get it. I kind of hope not. I'm like with you, put it to bed, rethink your approach to the Hellboy, do it as a series. I think they did it way back. There was an animated series, or at least there was an animated film, I know, at least one, but I think you've got enough story here to do it as an animated series so you can actually explore some of these ideas that you threw against the wall or threw the dartboard at to make this film. you know yeah, I don't know where it leaves you folks. If you're a fan and you want to go see it, yeah, but Chase and I will both say really not worth your money. um just save it and go see Endgame, or go see Marvel, or go see Captain Marvel, or go see Shazam again. Shazam, mad props to Shazam. I'm just going to put it out right now for keeping a twist in that film secret. There's a something that happens in the third act I did not see coming in Shazam, and it was nowhere in any trailer. It was nowhere anywhere online, and I was like, yes, thank you. I don't know how you were, Chase, with the sharing of power. There, I spoiled it. But that ending in Shazam, but I found that interesting.
Yeah, it was something that caught me off guard. And once again, didn't know anything about that. That's a part of the comics. And that's a huge storyline with that said twist, and I kind of want to see that to a TV series, because when you look at Shazam and their kind of world building, they go into like different realms and shit. It's actually really fascinating on how much they explore. So that would also be a good TV show. So,
oh yeah, definitely. So I mean, some of these things, the Hellboy, don't bother, folks. Really, you'll be disappointed. At least wait till rental. That way you can watch it at home. You can pause it, or you can just leave it playing in the background while you're looking up other things. Because it unfortunately has a bunch of people I like. It had elements that I was hoping I'd really enjoy, but in the end, it shows you that you need at least somewhat of a decent script, a decent backbone. And if you don't have a backbone, have the star power that can cover it up. And in this one, the film comes up short in both. So they don't have quite the charisma of your main character for you to let pass maybe the weak plot. So you have a weak plot that doesn't get covered up by the performances by people. So in the end, you're left with a rather empty film. Although I will say I did enjoy more bits of this film than I did The Curse of La Illorana. That film, oh my God. Anyway, so there you have it, folks. We'll wrap it up here. Chase, thank you so much for talking about this film.
It's always a pleasure, and I think I'm gonna keep track of ones that we do together, and this is by far the worst one we've seen together so far.
Out of all the films we see, I mean, we watched, Nick Cage, Wicker Man. We've watched that Children's of the Corn.
Yeah, we've watched some bad stuff, folks. Like, we have watched some stuff that you cannot even fathom of wasting an hour and a half of your life with, but we did it. And it was not fun, but at least like they were enjoyably bad.
Out of modern films, Hellboy is probably the worst, one of the worst ones we've both seen. Although I think the Children of the Corn one might beat it out a bit. But still, that's not saying a whole lot. So now, folks, this is where I give Chase the license to shill. So please, Chase, tell my fine patrons where they can catch your stuff at.
Yes, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Real Chase Lee. If you guys want to go to my YouTube channel, it's Real Chase Lee, REL Chase Lee. I just covered the Dallas International Film Festival. I got 11 films that I reviewed on my page, all very, very different from one another. A bunch of foreign films, just a bunch of smaller fare if you guys are into that stuff. And then, of course, my podcast, Reel Me In, a movie podcast. It's on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all that stuff. Search it up, but that's where I'm at. But thank you, Mark, for having me once again.
Oh, always a pleasure, Chase. So check out his stuff, all really great stuff. He knows a lot more, and he is more intelligible than I am sometimes in my film discussions, but there you go.
Hey, well, hold on, Mark. You give yourself more credit because you remember the plot to Hellboy a lot more clearly than I did.
I can't remember my children's names, but by God, I can remember the plot to Hellboy. I don't know what that says about me, but I think we'll end it there. So just say goodnight, everyone.
Good night.
Well, thank you, Chase.
No problem.
Appreciate this, sir. It'll be interesting. I got Lamont and Cara for The Brood Wednesday, and then I don't know if you're busy on Sunday. I've got Lamont again then, and Paul. We're going to be talking Endgame, and I'm sure you'll be talking Endgame on your podcast. So if I'm sure you will be. So
I'm trying to think what I'm doing that day. I might be free. I might not. I mean, just go ahead and keep your schedule as planned. And if you have an extra spot and it gets closer to time, just hit me up and I'll let you know where I'm at.
All right. Yeah, I'll toss it to you because I'm not sure who all will be on it extra or who might throw in at the last minute. But I'll keep you in mind, and I'll toss out there what time. Will probably be in the evening, not a late evening. Like with Lamano, probably might be an 8:30 recording again or whatnot. But we're gonna do it Sunday night. Because we've talked about every other superhero film on our show, so we're just going to carry that tradition on.
See, but if I did come on and I love the movie, it's gonna be like walking into a lion's den because you guys are gonna all roll your eyes and be like, "Oh my god, this fucking child!
No.
Look at him liking these movies." And it's like, yes, sir. Yes, the movies are good. Yes.
Are you kidding? I have some friends who just adore these films. So, and again, I'm not sure. I do not hate these films by any means. People would come up or to be like, "Oh, well, Endgame, it's going to be." I'm like, dude, I bought early tickets to Endgame. Okay, I do not hate these films by any means.
No, Mark. I know that you do not. I just joke around with you, and we joke with each other. But my God, there are some real human beings out there. If you go on Twitter, like they hate this like so bad, like they give themselves ulcers. Like, so I know that you're joking and you actually like some of them, but there are some people out there that get furious at this franchise and are like, this is just nothing but kids' films. You guys are all idiots. And it's like, my word, your life must be awful.
The only complaint, and it was I got a little bit of discussion with my buddy of many years, 30 plus years. He's like a brother. We disagree on. He's one of the ones that we disagree on the Star Wars films. I loved the last two, and he did not so much. But his mom, he asked his mom if she wanted to go with them to see Endgame. And she's like, "Oh, I'm not sure." She's like, "I might have to watch some of the previous films to follow what's going on." And for me, I think that's the one thing that gets me with the whole combined universe. And maybe it's just me because me as a film goer is the fact that going into these films, and I know it's a sequel, but you can't just watch, even with it being a sequel, I could say, well, watch the other Avenger films, but you can't because you still would be fairly lost. You actually have to watch some of the other MCUs.
Mark, I've actually been pondering that for the past year because if someone came up to me and they're like, I want to watch Avengers Infinity War, which ones do I watch? Can I watch any of them? And I would honestly have to tell them you have to watch all of them. And I know that it's a bit of a handicap for an average moviegoer, and I think that's why I like kind of adore Feige is because he kind of knew that going in, like this was going to be a huge risk because yeah, he's trying to get in like average moviegoers, but at the same time, you're going to have to know what's going on, and so it is a bit of a weird thing because I'll guarantee you most of the people that bought their tickets to Endgame have already seen most of them and even Infinity War at the bare minimum because you can't just have someone go, I'm going to go see Endgame Thursday night. What is this one about? I have no clue. Fuck it. I'm just going to go. And you're like, no, there's no person on this earth that exists like that.
Right. And I guess for me, outside as one half of me thinks that's awesome that there is a part of me that sits there and goes, it's not quite fair that you can't just you can't watch just maybe a few films to know what's going on. You pretty much have to watch all of them going up. But there was a point, and I think maybe it was around Iron Man 3, maybe about the halfway point to where I looked at it and going, okay, you've stopped now kind of making these to try to pull new people in, and you're pretty much going with the fan base you've built up now. For the core storyline. I think like films like Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, even Black Panther, those are films that people could actually probably start with and be pulled in. You can watch those. You don't have to watch ones previously to really understand what's going on. And those I actually kind of like a little more. But when you get into the meat of things, you're gonna have to watch the rest. And to me, I'm like, that's maybe a little unfair to have people watch 22 films. But I realized that like the halfway point, they just stopped wanting to pull in the audience. They figured we've pulled in the audience we need, and we're just gonna make these films committed. We're committed to this storyline, and this is going to be for them. And should someone come in, well, they'll just have to realize, oh, you might have to watch the other films. And that I don't have a problem at all with it. It just bugs me a little as a film goer. It's like you can pick up a Bond film. There's like 29, however many Bond films. You can really go into a James Bond film, any one of them. You don't have to watch the previous Bond films to really know what's going on, except maybe a couple of the Daniel Craig films, but you could pick up, okay, he's a spy. Here you go. You got this. All right, here you go. You know, but with these films, when you hit like Civil War, you'll be lost if you haven't watched the other films. Avengers 2.5, you're going to be lost really if you don't see the other films. You can't just watch Avengers and Age of Ultron and then hit Civil War and follow really what's going on, because you'll be going with half those characters going, who are these guys?
Right.
What? And so for me, I guess I feel like that's a little unfair for someone who wants to get into it. But at the same time, I think about it and I step off my lawn. I go back to my rocking chair and I sit there and go, well, in all honesty, if someone stepped in and watched Return of the Jedi first, I'd say, well, you really want to watch the other two, before you go into Return of the Jedi. So I'm like, it's kind of like that, only on an epic scale of 22 films.
Right. Yeah, it's a crazy thing, man. But I think that's why it's so special, because we're never going to see anything like it ever again in terms of actual story continuity, in terms of stringing along 20 plus movies together in the same type of story thread. We're never going to see this type of like hype event film in a long time. Like it's kind of insane, like what they were able to kind of conjure up, because this isn't like just some random franchise that gained a cult following. Like this is it's unheard of to continue along a franchise this large and have all these different properties, but all of them come together and make some type of sense.
The scope of it is insane. It is unprecedented, and you're not going to pull it off again. And in all honesty, I have a feeling that this is, if you look at a graph, like a bell curve or whatnot, I honestly think in Endgame is going to be the peak of your MCU in general. And unless they really got their shit together, which I get a kind of feeling they don't fully after Endgame, I have a feeling it's going to wane a bit as far as how good the films are. I could be wrong, but it just feels like this is really a peak, and we might hit a valley for a little while with some of the MCU films.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, everything's just nothing but sun and roses. It's like,
no, I know you are. No, I know you are.
I mean, it's very possible Spider-Man Far From Home could be terrible, and it could completely just derail everything that we saw, like possibly being great in Endgame, or maybe vice versa. Maybe Endgame is terrible and Far From Home is so amazing, and it's like then people are back into the faith again. So even if Marvel has like a stumble, I don't think they're ever going to have consistent stumbles. They might have one periodically, but I think even on the bare minimum, like normal movie going audiences love the movies. And so even if you and I might like it and have some issues with it, you might think it's so, but have issues with it. Most of the general going movie audience, like they love it regardless.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're trying to kind of string along, and just making sure they get families coming back and people going on repeat viewings and whatnot. And so I don't think I've ever seen them have a consistent valley before. They might have some spikes down occasionally, but I've never seen them have like a couple in a row, either critically, fan receptance, or box office wise, to make me go, oh, they're going to be in a slump for a while,
Right. And again, I hope they prove me wrong, because I think it's awesome, and they set the bar. As far as DC goes, take Shazam and even the Spirit of Aquaman and run with that. Because that works a hell of a lot better with the general going audience. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy Batman v Superman. I know I'm in the minority. I loved Justice League. I know I'm in the minority.
Hey, listen, you and I are the only two people on the planet that like that movie. I will sing from the rooftops all day, every day. The best two they've ever done in the entire universe are Man of Steel and BVS, the extended cut. Those are the only two that I can actually sit there and go, you know what? DC was on a roll. And I even like, most of Wonder Woman. I like Shazam. So they actually have more hits than misses for me. But they are finding they're finding their stride a little bit with Aquaman, Shazam, and oh my God, what was the I guess that was oh man, I'm losing my thought. Anyways, but of course, they got Wonder Woman 1984 coming out,
Right.
and they have Aquaman 2 will come out in 100 years from now because that's when it's supposed to come out. And then
they're talking a Black Adam film,
right? Black Adam. So they're finding their footing a little bit, and it makes me kind of excited to know that the Joker trailer has twice as many views as the Star Wars Episode 9 teaser, which is great.
Dude, the Joker thing looks like Taxi Driver. People are comparing it, and I'm like, it totally seems like urban drama. I'm like sitting here going,
hey, listen, I'm all for it. You give me like that. I would not be surprised if that was the surprise movie for award season. Like you can quote me on this. I will go to the grave on this one. I think this one is going to surprise a lot of people, not only critically and from fans, but I actually think it's going to crush the box office, and it's going to garner up some award attention, and it's going to be Warner Brothers kind of like hanging it over Disney's head, so to speak, going, look, even though you're going to make $300 billion with Endgame, look at this little Joker movie that we made, and it got Joaquin Phoenix a Best Actor nom. Right. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. When I saw the trailer, I'm like, okay, I did not expect that approach, but the approach they're taking, I'm like, I totally want to see this film because it's something completely different. I'm like, this is awesome. And I've seen some people complain about this. I'm like, dude, this is an approach to the Joker that I don't think anybody would have imagined someone trying to even do with this character, and I'm like sitting going, I'm excited for it as well. I'm watching it going, because I love the Joker. He's one of my favorite characters. And I got worried at first a little bit when I saw some of the stills, but I'm like, okay, well, we'll wait till the first trailer came out. And that trailer came out, and I'm like, oh, damn. I'm like, that I'm all for. I'm on board for that. I got to ask you, since you are such a lovable, and if I'm keeping you from something, let me know. I'll let you go. I don't want to keep you from, people or things, but what do you feel about the supposedness that Endgame is not the end of Phase 3, but Far From Home actually is?
Okay, so I actually had this conversation with my podcast co-host before we actually started recording, and he was concerned about that. And he was like, well, Endgame is the culmination of a 10-year-long, storyline. And I'm like, I get that. And, he's just worried that, we're going to reach, like you said, like a peak in Endgame. And then it might just be like, a good little end stinger to the phase, and then we begin. But Endgame should be the real ending piece. Well, here was my response to that, and I'll get to you what he brought up as a hypothetical. So I said, well, Ant-Man did the same thing in Phase 2. It came after Age of Ultron, and that was after, an Avengers film, but he stated that wasn't the end of a storyline. Fair enough. And so he was saying that what if Spider-Man Far From Home introduced the next phase's big baddie? And I said, that's an interesting theory, but I don't think that Disney's going to softball Sony with that burden. I think they're going to want to keep that for themselves and introduce that in Phase 4, because they have a partnership with Sony, but I don't think Kevin Feige is an idiot and is going to be like, oh, I want to introduce the next Phase 4, 5, and 6 villain in a Sony movie. He's not going to do that. He's going to wait until one of his own movies, which is fair enough. So I could care less, to be honest with you. just because it reminds me of when Ant-Man was the end of Phase 2, so it doesn't really bother me. But I know it's bothering a lot of people out there.
I don't know. I posted jokingly, in which I love all the people that follow me. I appreciate them. But I posted the article about how they filmed 5 different endings for Endgame, so no one knew exactly what the real one was. And I jokingly posted on my Facebook page that, oh, Marvel is taking the Clue route from 1985, and there's going to be a different ending depending on which theater you go to for Endgame. And the only time you're going to find out which ending was actually the real one is when Far From Home comes. And people were like, "What? Disney's doing what?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, no. I'm joking. I'm joking." But dude, could you imagine that? You have Endgame and you have the 5 different endings, and depending on which theater you go to, that's the ending you get. But you won't know what the official one of those 5 were until Far From Home came out. Talk about boosting your Far From Home box office.
Right. I mean, it's kind of incredible that these Avengers films can spike up all the other films around it. Like, look at Black Panther. I know that was a culturally significant film, but dear God, if it wasn't the film before Infinity War, something else would have taken its place and gotten 700 million domestically. So, that had its kind of boost. And of course, Ant-Man after Ultron, Iron Man 3 hit $1 billion after the first Avengers. Captain Marvel was the appetizer before Endgame, and it got $1 billion. I'm telling you, I don't know what Feige put in the water over there at Disney, but he has created literally the Disney magic that Walt Disney always wanted.
Yeah.
And I don't know how he did it, but God bless that man. He is one of the most ferocious businessmen of our time, and I can't believe we're living in this day and age.
Yeah, I can't either. I can't at all. Because it's one of those things where he's got that right formula. Even the ones that are poor. I'm looking at you, Thor: Dark World and Age of Ultron.
Listen, I totally agree with you. That's if I had to rank them, that is one of the weaker ones for me.
And in all honesty, Age of Ultron as well is just a complete setup film, 100%. Like you took Ultron and you just put him in this setup for the next phase type films. I watched it 3 times and I just could not quite get into it. But he does still have that formula to where whatever culmination of the crossovers, whatever film's going to be before it, people are going to go in because you're going to get a little morsel of what's to come.
Right.
And that's why people are in. That's why I joked about it. But then, as I joked about it and I was telling people, no, I'm just kidding. I'm thinking about that going, man, that would be some cojones, but that would really be an interesting approach to Endgame. And it would be kind of fitting with the way Infinity War played out as well, with the different outcomes of the film, how Doctor Strange saw the only one where they actually win. I'm like, wow, that would be interesting to see them actually try to pull that Clue angle, like when Clue first hit the theaters back in the 80s. I don't know if you're familiar at all. You know the movie Clue, though, correct?
Right.
The comedy with Tim Curry and just a fantastic cast, Christopher Lloyd or whatnot, based off of the board game.
Yeah.
It's got 3 endings, if you've ever watched it, which if you haven't yet, it's hilarious. It's fucking brilliant. But there were 3 endings. But when it came out in the theaters, only one of those endings was at the end of the movie. You only got all 3 endings when it came out to video home release. When it went to the theaters, there was actually different theaters that had different endings to the movie. And it was it was phenomenal because on the radios, they were telling people which theater to go to get which ending.
I mean, that's a pretty great marketing move, but I think over the past few movies, we've seen the stakes get higher and higher for these storylines and stuff, and they're starting to get ballsier. And I think it finally clicked for me when I saw the ending to Infinity War last year. Right. I was like, oh wow, these guys are not messing around. They're willing to do whatever ballsy ending they want to do, and it kind of gets me excited because they can literally do something as crazy as that and get away with it, and elevate the stakes. So it's kind of like a modern Clue situation where like it's not multiple endings, but it's a controversial ending. It's a very like kind of crazy ass ending that we're not used to. So I mean, but who knows? But I can't wait to discuss it with you because I'm going to hit you up. I'm going to have to ask you like what you thought of it.
Yeah, no, I'm down for a discussion always about film, especially about something like this. And so I'll before I let you go, I gotta know. So who do you think's going to live and who's going to think's going to die of the Avengers that we have left? We have basically all the Phase 1 guys left and a couple of offshoots, but pretty much we have the core Avengers left, which I suspected was going to happen at the end of Infinity War. Everybody's like, and I'm like, no, this is their story. This is their arc. Of course, they're not going to kill all the original Avenger guys. So who do you think is actually going to buy it, and who's going to go off in the sunset with a potential to return later on?
I think Cap is the only one that is going to die. Like I feel like a good 90% chance, and I think Iron Man's actually going to survive, and him and Pepper are going to have their child and get married.
It would be interesting because if you really look at 22 films, at least 18 of those involve an arc with Tony.
Right.
So in some respects, yeah, it would be interesting. I don't know. I personally think, I totally agree. Cap's dead. Cap, he's gonna die. In some major self-sacrifice event, he's gonna die. Rhodey will live. I think Falcon's probably gonna live. I'm not sure about Iron Man. I'm on the fence yet on whether or not he's actually going to survive. Because of all the shit that his character has gone through. They could have him live, but he's got the post-traumatic stress syndrome. He basically has watched all of his plans kind of fall apart, turn to ash. I don't know. It's hard to say, but yeah, I will fully agree with you there that Cap for sure is done. He's done. Regardless of what you think of contracts or whatnot, I think he will die in a major sacrifice event.
Which I think is probably the most appropriate for him because he was a guy that was denied military service. He has, been stuck in time and out of time for, a good while now. He does not get along with some people because of his ideology and the way his thought process is. He's lost everyone around him. He is slowly starting to understand the modern world and stuff, but I still think that he's got that military fighting bone in him. And I think him going out in a courageous act is probably the most satisfying thing for his arc.
What if I said Hulk was going to die?
You aren't crazy. I think that is a possibility actually.
I'm wondering if David Banner is going to get his swan song as well. Again, these heroes, don't get me wrong. The majority of them, if they're going to die, of the core Avengers, if they truly are going to bite the bullet, it's going to be in some grand fashion. They're not going to get toss off death. It's not going to be just a simple bullet to the head. I mean, it's going to be some epic sacrifice. But yeah, I wouldn't doubt that Banner, not even taking into account the fact that Ruffalo's done with the character. I mean, I've seen interviews in that to where he doesn't like the mocap. He doesn't. That's why we got floating head Banner at the end of Infinity War. I think just the way that character is, I honestly think he's going to die because the Hulk always felt like a property that that Marvel it's the one character it always felt like Marvel didn't quite know what to do with. for a solo story or whatnot. I mean, Thor Ragnarok, yeah, but I don't know. So I think Hulk may buy it, and I think Cap for sure is a goner. Iron Man, I'm not sure. We know at least Black Widow will probably survive, and Hawkeye will, though he's going to be Ronin now, which uh, looks pretty badass. And I'm not sure about the rest. We know Strange will be back because he gets a sequel, and that's kind of the problem I have, and probably Black Panther. But yeah, of the core Avengers that are there, yeah, we both agree Cap's gone. He's going to have to, because he doesn't like the real world, the modern world. It doesn't fit him, his ideology. Like you said, he's realizing what the world is, but he is going to refuse to change. He will not let go of that ideology, and it just doesn't quite fit in the real modern world anymore.
Well, I also think that his final straw is when Peggy died. Once Peggy was
Yeah.
gone, he has not been there mentally since, and I think it just once again just makes sense for him to go out in a courageous act.
Yeah. Yeah. It would make sense because yeah, he has no ties anymore. I mean, he kind of has her daughter, which is really a awkward situation. But I'm like, wow, he played the long game. Uh, but yeah, with Peggy gone, he's got no ties. Iron Man at least has Pepper yet. So yeah, we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. 3 days. I'm very excited to see how this is going to play out, and I'm looking forward to taking my boys to see it. They've watched all these films. My one son just turned 17. The other one is almost 19. So these movies have been around for most of their life.
Right.
They're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to going with them and experiencing it. You know, it'll be an interesting thing, and yeah, we'll definitely talk afterwards for sure about it because I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Well, thank you, Chase. I don't want to keep you anymore tonight, but I appreciate you coming on the show. I really do. So
yeah, no problem, man. I'll hit you up later.
always a pleasure, sir.
All right, man. Peace out.